All the various traditions are agreed that this basic problem of suffering exists, but they have different methods of dealing with it to bring the individual back to the experience of primordial unity. The Hinayana tradition of Buddhism follows the path of renunciation that was taught by the Buddha in his human form and later written down in what are known as the sutras. Here the ego is regarded as a poisonous tree, and the method applied is like digging up the roots of the tree, one by one. One has to overcome all the habits and tendencies that are considered negative and hindrances to liberation. There are thus, at this level, many rules of conduct, governed by vows that regulate all one's actions. The idea is that of a monk or nun, who takes the maximum number of vows, but in any event, whether as a monk or a lay practitioner, one's ordinary way of being is considered impure and to be renounced, in order, through the development of various states of meditation, to recreate oneself as a pure individual, who has gone beyond the cause of suffering, an arhat, who returns no more to the round of births and deaths in conditioned existence. From the point of view of the Mahayana, to seek only one's own salvation in this way and to go beyond suffering whilst others continue to suffer is less than ideal. In the Mahayana, it is considered that one should work for a greater good, putting the wish for the realization of all others before one's own realization, and indeed continually returning to the round of suffering to help others go beyond it. One who practices in this way is called a bodhisattva. Hinayana or lesser vehicle and Mahayana or greater vehicle are both parts of the path of renunciation, but their characteristic approaches are different. Since to cut through the roots of the tree one by one takes a long time, the Mahayana works more to cut the main root so that the other roots may wither by themselves. The way to cut the main root is considered to be to discover the essential voidness both of the subject and of all objects, and to develop supreme compassion. It must be noted that whereas the Mahayana posits the voidness of both the subject and its objects, and tells us to work towards realizing or discovering both, in the Hinayana only the voidness of the ego is posited and must be discovered. In the Mahayana, the intention behind one's actions is considered as important as one's actions themselves, which is a different approach from that of governing all one's actions with vows as one does in the Hinayana. There is a story that illustrates this difference of approach very well. A wealthy merchant who was a disciple of the Buddha went with a very large caravan of other merchants and his servants to a certain island to bring back for trade some of the gemstones for which this island was famous. On board ship on the way back, the merchant learned that another passenger on the boat intended to kill all the hundreds of people on board in order to be able to steal the cargo of jewels. The merchant knew the man, and he knew that he was indeed capable of killing all those people, and he wondered what to do about it. In the end, despite the fact that he had taken a vow with the Buddha never to take the life of another being, he had no alternative but to kill the would-be robber. He was very ashamed of what he had done, and as soon as he returned home he went to the Buddha to confess his bad action. But the Buddha told him he had not done wrong, because his intention had not been to take life, but to save life. Furthermore, since he had in fact saved the lives of hundreds of people and had saved the robber from the very great negative karma of killing hundreds of people and the inevitable consequences of such a bad action, the Buddha explained that the merchant had in fact done a good action. Because the intention behind one's actions is considered of such importance in the Mahayana, all practice is undertaken for the benefit of others. Zen Buddhism is a Mahayana path, and because it is often said to be a non-gradual method, people often think that it must be the same as Dzogchen, which is also sometimes spoken of as being a non-gradual path, although it is really more correct to say that it is neither gradual nor non-gradual. But the methods of the two teachings and the realizations obtained by them are fundamentally different. Both the levels of the path of renunciation, Hinayana and Mahayana, can be said to work at the level of body. Tantra, on the other hand, works at the level of energy or voice. Energy is obviously less concrete than body and less easy to perceive. It is harder to understand energy and how it functions than to understand the simple fact of suffering. A higher capacity is therefore needed to practice Tantra. Although the term Tantra and its Tibetan equivalent Gyu has become to be used to denote the principal texts that contain tantric teachings, the true meaning of the word is continuity, in the sense that although all phenomena are void, nevertheless phenomena continue to manifest. All tantric methods work with this continuation, taking the voidness of all phenomena, which the sutras work towards as their basic assumption. From the sutra point of view, the relative dimension is an obstacle to be renounced in order to realize the absolute level of voidness. But Tantra uses the relative to fuel progress on the path that leads beyond it, and its attitude to the passions renounced at the sutra level is expressed in the tantric saying, "When there is more wood, passions, there is more fire, realization." There are outer and inner tantras, also called lower and higher tantras in the schools other than the Nyingmapa or ancient school. Both these levels of tantra use visualization as a principal means, but the outer tantras begin working at the level of external conduct of the practitioner to bring about a purification of thought and action to prepare the practitioner to receive wisdom. The outer tantras thus begin with what is called the path of purification, the first level of the Vajrayana, or the indestructible vehicle. The second level of the Vajrayana is the path of transformation, which begins with the third and last level of the outer tantras and includes all the first two levels of the inner tantras. These inner tantras work once again on the basic assumption of the voidness of all phenomena, but the first two levels principally use inner yoga, working on the subtle energy system of the body to bring about a transformation of the practitioner's whole dimension into the dimension of the realized being visualized in the practice. These methods were taught by the Buddha in a manifestation body, rather than by him in his physical body, as well as by other Sambhogakaya manifestations. Transmission of Tantra is originally received through a manifestation of the Sambhogakaya dimension appearing to a master who has sufficient visionary clarity to perceive that dimension. And the method of practice used in Tantra is also that of manifestation. Once one is initiated into the practice by the master, through visualization and the reintegration of one's subtle energy, one follows the example of the original transmission and manifests oneself as the deity, entering the pure dimension of the mandala. Thus, one realizes the Sambhogakaya, oneself, transcending the mundane world of the gross elements which are transformed into their essences. When one dies, one enters the dimension of light and colour that is the essence of the elements, and in that purified state, though not active in the individual sense, one remains capable of continually benefiting other beings. It is said that the developed tantric practitioner is like a baby eagle, which is ready to fly as soon as it hatches from the egg. As soon as one dies, at that very moment, without entering the bardo or intermediate state, one manifests as the divinity whose practice one has accomplished in one's lifetime. This realization is clearly different from the simple cessation of the round of birth and death which is aimed for in the sutra practices.